This is Notorious POD, the podcast for the best informed people in the real estate industry. Rob Hahn is your host, and Notorious is where the real estate industry comes for real talk with no bullshit.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Musings. I don't know, it's feel like I keep doing these later and later in the week, but it's been a kind of crazy busy week. But there's something that came across, and I don't know, I just wanted to talk about it. And I understand that a lot of my musings, especially recently, has been around macroeconomic topics, but it's because it's like the most important thing going on, that affects the housing market. And I saw this video put out by Real Vision, and towards the tail end of it, it was kind of, whatever, uninteresting for most of it. But towards the tail end, there was a section that I thought was really interesting, really relevant. I thought, you know what, let's actually explore this a little bit. Let's think about this bit, because I think we're starting to see it. So let me share the video with you guys, and hopefully the sound will come through. Make it a little larger. So this is a thing that just happened, was streamed live. And the title is called, "Is it time to talk about hyperinflation?" Now, they didn't get to this until almost near the very end, but this is the section. So let's just play it real quick together, and then we'll kind of talk about it, right?
We haven't talked about hyperinflation yet because, one of my newsletters this week, I said, look, back in 2010, 11, 12, 13, all anybody could talk about was hyperinflation because the Fed was doing QE. We didn't get any inflation. Now we have 8.5% inflation, and everybody's afraid to talk about hyperinflation, but we're already almost there. I mean, if you believe the shadow stats guy, John Williams, that inflation is actually 17 or 18%, and if you take the definition of hyperinflation at 20%, we are almost there. So
let me pause there real quick, because the thing I want to point out here is this. So he's correct that definition of hyperinflation is 20% a year, right? Okay. Headline inflation, government numbers are 8.5%. But I wrote a post making fun of that. If you remember, it was a quick note. If you missed it, go check it out. But I basically said the headline is probably too low. Why? Because the shelter component is tiny, right? It's talking about, let's see, shelter costs up 0.5% year over year, right? And saying the rent is up 4.4% year over year, whereas this owner equivalent rent is up like 4.5% unadjusted year over year. And I just like, these are just unbelievable numbers. Why? Because we know rents are already up 19.4%. I think that number is really significant because, as he mentioned, if 20% is the definition of hyperinflation, rent is there. Rent is at 19%. Home sales, we already know it's up. Realtor.com says 13.5 in February. Maybe it's January, but the latest Case-Shiller, which is like 30 to 60 days delayed, showed 19% year over year. So we're right there in real estate, right? Already, if we look at like real numbers as opposed to what the government's saying. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Here's the second thing.
So I don't think, we used to talk about these people like, conspiracy theorists and stuff like that, talking about hyperinflation, but we actually have to start talking about these conversations because the psychology behind this is totally out of control.
Yeah, and the psychology meaning that people expect it to continue to go up, they're going to act accordingly, right?
Okay, so that part's important, the psychology behind it, right? And that's the piece I clipped out because, okay, let's think about what this means, right? So the problem with hyperinflation, obviously, and we hear stories from like Weimar, Germany, Argentina, some of the emerging countries where people go, okay, if I get paid, I immediately have to go to the grocery store and buy food, because if I wait till tomorrow, price will have doubled, right? I mean, it's things like that. So it creates this real urgency to spend money to buy what you need, what you want, because if you wait at all, then price is going to be higher, right? a day later, a week later, a month later, what have you. Okay, that's the psychology of hyperinflation. As you were saying, it's out of control. I guess the question is, are we there yet? I think, as general economy, society as a whole, we're probably not there yet, but there are some key exceptions. What I would argue is that we're there in housing already, right? And we're starting to see little sort of data points flow out of it. So, um, for example, let's see, share this again. All right. So there's like 3 stories up on Inman right now, right? And the headlines are these: driven up by high costs, Americans are still relocating at a record pace. Record 32.3% of Redfin users sought to move to a new area as housing price and mortgage rates climb. I know that the major headline story here is relocation, right? The major story is with work from home, COVID, all this stuff, thousands, millions of Americans are going, you know what, we need to get the hell out, right? But part of that, I think, is sort of this hyperinflation story. Here's what I mean. Let's say you're living in San Francisco. Let's say you're living in New York City. Let's say you're living in some of these very high priced, high rent markets. And you say to yourself, okay, we've been locked in, we've been locked down. Home is far more important than I ever thought. I can now work from home, so I don't have to live in San Francisco. I don't have to live in New York. I don't have to live in Chicago. I could live anywhere. Okay, it's time to buy. But if we wait, right? If home price is going up 20% a year, if we wait, then it's too late. So we have to act now. So it doesn't, even though mortgage rates are rising, I think they're over 5% now on average. The Fed has signaled all kinds of, interest rate rises, quantitative tightening, supposedly, all these things. People are just saying, yeah, that might be the case, but we need to go, and we need to go now. We need to go Q1. We need to move right now. This year, 2022, is going to be a very interesting story. Okay, second story: rising home price expected to drive record purchase loan volume. This is despite rates going up, right? So despite rates north of 5% and people freaking out because it's like double what it was maybe 2 years ago, that's true, but historically it's really low, right? And if we're having 8.5% headline inflation and rates are 5, I'm sorry, the bank is still paying you to borrow money. Of course, we're going to see movement. Of course, we're going to see, that. But part of this, again, what I would argue is the psychology of hyperinflation. And I don't know that home buyers have thought things like that. I don't know that real estate agents are thinking things like that. But I think we're seeing it, right? This massive sort of, doesn't matter, 5%, 6%, 8%, 10%, whatever the percent is. If you think you're in a hyperinflationary type environment and you want to buy a house, you have to act now. The best time to have bought a house would have been like last year or 2 years ago. The second best time is today. Third best time is tomorrow, right? And so as time passes, things are only going to get worse because things are only going to get more expensive, right? That is hyperinflationary psychology at work. Where else we see it? A third story: power buyer clients made 1 offer on average, traditional buyers 7. Again, the meat of the story here is around the power of, these all cash power buyers, the bridge loan model, whatever you want to call it. Because you're going in all cash, you make 1 offer, it's cash, it's, whatever, 10,000, 20,000 over asking, you're going to get it. Traditional buyers made 7. So I know the main story here is around the power of, these power buyers, which makes me happy because I might still win my bet about iBuying. But the other story, I think, is the fact that traditional buyers made 7 offers on average, which means half of them made more than 7 offers, right? That suggests to me that there's an urgency. I don't know if I want to use the word desperation just yet, but there's an urgency. We need to buy, and we need to buy now. Why? Because I think either they know it explicitly, right, or it's sort of intuitive, right, that they recognize if they wait, if they say, you know what, let's just wait until the fall, home prices could be up another 5%. It could be up another 10%, right, depending on where you live. And the hyperinflation piece, I think, really it's maybe market by market. Obviously, real estate's local, so I don't know if you're living on the middle of nowhere in rural America somewhere, you're not seeing any hyperinflation. You can wait. But so this is Redfin's report talking about March prices, 17.3% year over year, very close to the 20% marker for hyperinflation definition. But if you scroll down, look at the top 10 metros, right? And these are sort of the most popular destinations for a lot of these people moving out of the cities, right? The real high rent cities. And like they're all in Florida, Tennessee, except for Irvine, California. That's a weird one, but okay. 44% year over year, 43% year over year. Memphis, Tennessee, 40.8% year over year. Naples, Florida, 37.5%. By definition, all of these markets are in hyperinflation territory. And that's the top 10. My guess is the top 20, maybe the top 30, maybe even the top 40 is in hyperinflation category. But by definition, it's over 20% year over year. So in the housing market, I think what we're seeing is this hyperinflation psychology takes place. So when the trader at like Real Vision, he's worried about this hyperinflation psychology. It's totally out of control. It's taking hold, but it hasn't really hit yet, right? We haven't really seen it. We haven't seen it in the general economy, right? Cars, food, whatever. We are seeing it in housing, and I would argue we have seen it. We are seeing it, and that psychology has now taken hold. All right. I don't know if this is data, but this is Musings. So in the last few weeks, I personally, as you all know, I do strategy consulting. I've had a lot of conversations with companies large and small, talking about things like zero down payment or fractional ownership or some other way to allow people, right, who maybe are mortgage qualified, but they don't necessarily have the down payment saved up, but they're in a weird gig type worker. They're going to have difficulty with sort of the traditional 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and they want to help them buy a house. Why? Because I think the demand that they're seeing and the opportunity that they're seeing as a result is a lot of these people, especially younger, say 31, 32, they can't wait. Those people know if they wait, they may never be able to get on the housing ladder, right? Why? Because home prices are in a hyperinflationary environment, right? 44% a year is 10% a quarter. Like if you wait, you may not be able to afford it. So I think that's where we're seeing some of the behavior that we have heard of. Now, there's also some signs that, maybe the housing market's already cooling, mortgage rates are high, so the buyer demand is dropping. Maybe things are going to flip. Maybe, right? It's entirely possible. But I don't know. I mean, I guess we'll find out. That makes 2022. I think that makes this spring season and the summer season incredibly important and incredibly interesting, because we have two sort of countervailing forces in my mind. One is we have the Fed sort of really tightening, trying to fight off inflation. So they're going to raise rates, which makes mortgages more expensive. They're going to stop buying mortgage bonds, supposedly, maybe soon. I've heard from analysts that they haven't yet done it, but they're going to. Maybe even selling, mortgage bonds to really try and tighten it out. If that happens, then presumably home prices will slow. We might flip, to a different, maybe a buyer's market, maybe a neutral market, who knows? At the same time, rents are going up 19% a year. And in some markets, they're above 20%, that marker for hyperinflation, which then generates hyperinflationary psychology. So people are just going to be like, just rent anything, right? We can't wait. We don't have the luxury of kind of shopping around. We'll see how the market works out, I think, in the spring and summer. But I think this is one of the things maybe where housing, I think, might be the leader, because we've seen these insane home prices because asset inflation from 2 years ago. right? Like the minute we started money printing, the minute we started doing some of these incredibly inflationary things, we've seen it reflected in housing long before we've seen it in gas prices or food or electronics or what have you, consumer goods. So I would argue that we're already there. So what does that mean? I guess, if we are in a hyperinflationary environment, then buyer agents, y'all got your work cut out for you. Listing agents, y'all are in catbird seat, right? Because you're selling something that the price can go up literally by the day. I'm actually surprised that we're not seeing action like that, but maybe we will this spring and summer. The countervailing force is maybe the market really tanks because, I don't know, mortgage rates north of 6, people can't afford homes. Maybe institutions rotate in, maybe they don't. Who the hell knows? That's what makes macroeconomics fun and entertaining if you're a weirdo, I guess, like me. But it is something that I think agents do have to pay attention to. I think, and maybe this is more for brokers, for coaches. Like as you guys are talking to your agents who are in the field, maybe it's a bit much to expect them to be listening to Real Vision or follow macroeconomics. Maybe it's your job to kind of produce some of this data for them and explain like how they should be working with their clients about it. If you're a tech company, if you are an investor, then obviously all of these things are going to be relevant for sort of your decision making. So that's kind of what my musing is for the day, that, everyone's thinking about inflation and it's certainly on everyone's mind. But I think in terms of psychology of hyperinflation, this notion that you can't wait, because if you wait, you're going to miss your chance. I think we've already had it. I think we already had it in real estate, in housing. I think we're having it, and I don't see it stopping. I don't think the rates are quite high enough. And I think a lot of people have a lot of cash, right? For a variety of reasons, right? Part of it is, all the money printing, the government bailouts, all of that. Part of it is because of lockdowns. A lot of folks just didn't go anywhere. They didn't spend their money. So they want to buy a house, and they have this, even if it's unspoken, I think what we're seeing is consumer behavior that is starting to reflect this hyperinflation psychology. So to me, that's what I expect to see, the next few months, because that's the real hot, sort of selling season. But then again, I could be wrong, right? Because rates will rise and who knows, some event will happen and there'll be a giant recession and unemployment and all of that. And, that's going to drive things the other way. So ain't macro fun? Nobody knows really the answer. So anyway, if you've listened, hey, thanks for listening. If you wouldn't mind, please consider subscribing so I could get a name for this channel. Thanks, y'all.